We're here with Tim Trudeau, Syntax Records, Syntax Distribution, Quality Junk, and a bunch of other stuff. For those who may not know the face, you know Rock Domes with the yelling mouth Twitter pic or whatever, man. Good to see you here, man. How you doing?
I'm all right. Why are you yelling at me?
Cause I'm an angry black man, Tim, and we yell at people for no reason. I'm gonna clap while I talk too, so it's gonna be all very hood, Tim, very hood. Oh, yeah, hold that for you.
No, cheers.
Oh, cheers. Yeah. So, you've been around for a long time.
30-esque.
It's a long time. You've been around in the Christian music, Christians doing music, that whole scene.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for a long time now.
Yeah.
What I'd love for you to do, if you could, is because I'm sure you got an interesting perspective because you've been doing syntax for how long now?
I would probably say maybe officially since '97, but really,
Unofficially? Ever?
Yeah, like basically just always doing it and then realizing one day, oh, we should probably do some paperwork or something.
Gotcha. We should legitimize this.
Yeah, before the government tried to shut us down or...
But you were doing something a while ago that was quite taboo at the time, which has become more popular now, where as the head of Syntax Records, you were distributing and putting out music that, and especially in the time, especially on 97, 98, during that time, being overtly Christian was the over-promoted thing to, like, that's how you do it. But the music you were putting out was quite opposite of that.
I would agree with that.
Who were some of the artists that you were putting out there?
I think one of the first people that are still, or one of the first people that we connected with that maybe people of today are still familiar with would be Braille. I think we met him when he was maybe, I don't know, either 14 or 17 or something crazy like that. And we had a mailing list on the internet that was called True Hip Hop, TRU Hip Hop. And there was people from all over the world on it, obviously mostly US, and there was, at one point in time, I think there was about over 10,000. And this was like 94, 95, and I don't even know how, who got where and what, but basically we had people on there that were, later became Marzil. We had guys who are pastors nowadays on there that were just, not pastors yet, maybe they were kids or who knows what, and then Braille was on there too. And just a lot of the people that ended up going off and starting a record label or a group or something were on there. So that was kind of like a central meeting place. That was when people were just starting to get on the internet at home, not at the library or college or whatever, public school.
And the music that you were putting out, even though people who may be familiar with Braille now, Braille's been very forthright in saying what he was doing before was not a Christocentric, Jesus-centered approach to, the putting out of his music. And you guys were more so known for decidedly not having that kind of music.
I might not say decidedly, but I know what you're saying, so go ahead.
As far as if you could paint the tent poles of the spectrum, you guys stood on the other end of it.
Sure. I think one way to put it would be that records were being heard at different points of the sanctification process. So perhaps some of the people we were working with were on the beginning, the beginning, like just starting that process. Maybe some of them didn't have a genuine conversion. There's just all kinds of things that were going on there. But in general, I grew up in a house where there was no such thing as secular music or Christian music. It just, the thought of there being a distinct line between the two was not. We just had music in our house. So I think we carried that in. I don't know if we were being decisive about that. It was just, we're just making music, and then we were Christians, so what would come out in that music would be, we hope, would be something that would reflect that worldview. And then again, just having people from all different walks of life, from different areas of the country, all at different parts of the process of sanctification caused it to, I mean, we were young. I mean, there was a lot of teenagers involved in what we were doing. So how many of us would like to let the whole world know what we think when we're a teenager? Not very many. So there was a lot of that going on. But as far as we knew at the time, everyone that we were working with was a believer. From the best process or test that we could come up with, as far as we knew, everyone we were working with were believers. And they were from all different, I mean, we had the full spectrum at one point in time. I mean, we had Calvinists on our label at the same time as having, Armenians. I mean, it was just there. So we didn't have like a label like, well, we're a Reformed label, so all of our artists are Reformed. We had the full gamut of, as far as, hopefully we didn't have any heretics, but in general, we didn't have like you have to agree to this doctrine or this statement of faith in order to work with us. It was, basically, do we all agree on these essentials? And then if we do, then that's cool. If you go to that church and I go here, where we stand, and we're still good with each other. So, and just even thinking about that, I don't think people started to get real heavy on that until later on. Because the other thing too is hip-hop was not inside the church very much then. So you have to remember, if I went to a church here, see, this is a neighborhood right here. You see it?
I see it.
There's the buildings.
This is the church. This is the people.
Oh, yeah, the people.
There's the people. Yep.
Yeah. So I might go to church in this neighborhood and there was no hip hop going on whatsoever, and it might be a conservative, whatever church, and then someone might go to the church over here, loves hip hop. That church is also not doing anything, and maybe they were a little more liberal, or maybe they were conservative, Pentecostal or something. So when it came to like Christian hip hop, it was individuals from a bunch of different churches kind of assembling together on the fringes, like getting together and working together. So if you threw a concert in San Diego, for example, everyone there was from a different church. So the idea of having a shared, like the only thing we had in common was everyone liked hip hop. There wasn't a shared doctrine or whatever.
Wow. So in the music that you guys were creating, so not decidedly, but a lot of the music that you guys were creating was not the Christocentric stuff that was happening maybe on the East Coast.
Well, I think the easiest way to deal with that is if we didn't say that we were decidedly this way, then everyone assumes you're that way. If you're not, if you're not saying that every single song is a gospel message, then you must be just in it for entertainment or whatever, which I'm not necessarily opposed to either, as long as it's up front and everyone knows it. I mean, I like to be entertained through music, so anyways, I think
some false dichotomies being created.
Yeah, if you weren't saying yes to this invisible, sort of social contract that was being kind of presented through people that were talking, if you didn't agree with that, then you were these people, and we weren't either of them. So that was a real interesting time to be around. We had our own, like internally, like our staff or myself had our theology, but our theology actually was allowing us to work with people from various theologies without a problem. And all that. There was freedom for some of our other folks to, I mean, again, like where were they at in the sanctification process? And to me, I wasn't in the business of evangelizing the doctrines of grace. That wasn't what it was about for me. Those are precious to me, but that doesn't mean that I needed to, that wasn't my mission. And it seemed like later on that became the mission, was the gospel is this, instead of it just being the gospel. So there was that trend going on as well. And I think that's, yeah.
So for lack of a better word, it was some unfair judgments being made on what was being done under the guise of what is or isn't Christians doing music effectively.
Yeah, and then in any scenario, I think what's always interesting is when people are making those judgments and they're not asking questions. I mean, I think everyone's experienced that, but why not ask? Why not say, so what is it? What are you guys about? What's going on here? Or instead of just assuming that it was a certain way. And what was even more interesting, I think, is our relationships were generally good with a lot of the artists on both sides. So it was more like, so that was behind the scenes, but then the consumers actually, or the fans of Christian hip hop, to me, were kind of the ones that really made it divisive, more than the artists at times. There were artists that were that way, I think, for sure, but if you have, I don't know, say there's 100 Christian rappers out there, and you had 2 that were super divisive, but with the fan base was like 50-50. I mean, it was really rough out there. And so we maintained, I mean, I met Wells from the Cross Movement in probably like 1994 or something. So there was a path that we were all moving along, and it seemed more like the consumers or radio and media was the one that wanted to create that. Maybe it's more interesting to talk about if there's a civil war going on inside of it. But we were fine.
So, having operated in that kind of environment 20 years ago,
Hey,
you said it, not me. You said 94. I didn't. So I haven't.
that's a long time ago.
It is when you put it like that, right?
When you make it into a number, it sounds crazy.
When it's just the year, it's like, oh yeah, I remember 94.
Yeah.
That was 19 years ago. The music that you put out then can drive now and can drink in Canada. Like, think about that. So having operated in that kind of environment 19, 20 years ago, fast forwarding to today, does it shock you to see that that's still the same kind of stuff going on? Are you surprised that, for lack of a better word, are you surprised that we haven't grown up from it yet and we're still trying to relearn the same lessons that we should have learned 19, 20 years ago?
Right, because I think people that came before us were maybe even dealing with similar things too. So if we came in after that, I mean, we're not, by any means, we're not the beginnings of this at all. We're like the middle.
Right, you said the Winans went through what they went through and
Yeah.
different genre, but
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, because that same debate, I mean, we're talking, some of the debates that are in the church are debates that have been here since the first century. So it doesn't surprise me that Christian hip hop would suffer from the same sort of debates at all. And I think, again, just those things are just evidence, again, that the sin nature, it's true, it's real, it exists. And just because you are on stage and you make a song where everything that you've thought about, several times, and then had the ability to record several, or walk through it several times in the studio before you change your minute or change your mind last minute, like you've had a lot of time to think about it. So you can say everything correctly on a song, but still be a jerk. And so maybe you're on stage, but you're like a total heathen. But everything that's coming from you from stage is appropriate and correct, just like politicians, pastors, any sort of leaders. So I'm not surprised by it at all. It's here, and sin is not left yet. It will, but for right now, it's still here, and it's affecting Christian hip hop and everything else we deal with.
so then how do the, I won't say OGs, but how do the older guys?
Oh geez, old
OG,
guys.
am I right, huh? Up top.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Oh,
All right.
that was 2 in total.
Hi, that was like 10.
Yeah.
That was good, man.
Thank
So-
you.
So how do the guys who've been around since that time and who were doing it then, how do they, rather than being bitter about the fact that
Yeah.
it's accepted now when they weren't?
I think that is an interesting thing that you watch too. So like I said, we weren't necessarily the beginning of this. I mean, there were people dropping records in the 80s. And I find it interesting when some of the guys that were before us, or maybe even people from our era, sort of have like a chip on their shoulder about everything. And so recognition is why you were doing this, or Like, who cares? Like, I think that's amazing. Like, you got to be a part of this. Like, this is exciting. It's a movement, and you got a piece of it. You were inside. God used you for a month, a day, or 6 years, or great, or he's still using, like, that's wonderful. So what do you want? I mean, do you want a Grammy, or, I mean, will you be satisfied when you get the Grammy? Will you be satisfied when you're a millionaire? What is it that you want to be finally like, aha, I've achieved it, I've gotten everything I deserve now? That whole thing makes no sense to me. And so the bitterness that people have about whether they're recognized as a founding father of it, who cares? The people that are on top right now will not be on top in the future, so who cares? Like, congratulations, you're in the spotlight in 2013, but in 2023 no one's going to know who you are, so who cares? And all these people that come out now with their mission statements, like, I want to make Jesus famous and stuff like that, sounds great. If that's true, then you won't be complaining or sound bitter in 10 years from now.
Dope. Lastly, as the person who is, you're the guy behind the curtain for a lot of albums, like, we're in a time now where twice a month we can look at the Billboard, we could look at the Billboard reports, you look at the sound scans, look at the iTunes charts, and
get depressed.
Or we actually get a little excited because we see some of our own, so to speak, up there, you know, up in the top 10 hip hop albums, top 20 Billboard, and all of that. And you're the guy distributing that stuff for the most part. Does it surprise you, not just seeing it, but also being the guy kind of behind the curtain helping to make that happen? Are you surprised to see that now compared to what everything looked like, 20 years ago?
It's exciting for sure. I mean, there's still separate sound scans. There's still a Christian sound scan and a general market sound scan. But yeah, it's exciting, but if we're being honest and we're looking at the numbers, it should be humbling, because it's like, cool, you're on a chart, but the numbers you sold are the numbers that people used to cough out in their sleep. So I don't really understand, like, it's not like, cool, it's working, I'm doing a good job. It's more just like, oh, that's cool, that's neat. Mm-hmm. So, and again, being behind the scenes now, or whatever you want to call it, to me, again, it's just like, wow, thank you. Like, I still get to be involved. Like, I was a teenager passionate about this, and like, I still get to do this. I still get to be involved. I might not be the one in the studio or whatever, but I still get to be a part of it, and that's exciting. Because like I was saying, it is a movement or whatever.
Last question, and feel free to deny even trying to answer this question. When you look over the landscape of things right now, and again, and as you're the one kind of distributing a lot of the stuff that's out, do you ever get surprised at the ones who kind of take a leap ahead? Do you ever get surprised and go, wow, I didn't think this would resonate with that, but that's cool. That's a good business for us. I mean, do you ever get surprised at that, or do you just que sera, sera?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I'm like most people my age, and that I'm turning into a hip hop curmudgeon, like, absolutely. So I try to be like aware of that when I'm thinking through and listening and stuff, but I am surprised at the level of quality or artistry that people accept and think is good quality now. I'm always surprised by that. That was happening already on the general market side. And what was cool about the Christian stuff was what made it different wasn't just the worldview, but it was quality, and it was thoughtful. Like, people were really working hard on making stuff that was really unique. And now, thanks to Pro Tools and $300 later, you have a studio at your house. You go to Guitar Center, an hour later you have a studio at your house. So now we have a bunch of people doing it, and what it's done is it's kind of like, whenever you take the barrier of entry and you lower it, it affects quality. So you have people like that were doing this because there was a reason. Like, I need to impact this culture, and I will do whatever it takes to impact this culture. So I will save up $20,000 for the next whatever to get to the point where I can record a song, or I will, save money up, go into the studio, whatever it took. Like, people would like do crazy things just to make a song or an album. And now you can, like I said, you can 1 week paycheck, run to Guitar Center, and then the next week have an album, then put it up on TuneCore, and boom, it's on iTunes. And so you're a professional, you're a Christian rapper now. And because of that, I think it's really lowered the quality of the stuff that's being put out. And I think that the idea of the copycat, which there's always the copycat element in any scene, like anything successful, that's not unique to Christians. But what has happened is the amount of copycats is ridiculous now. So, wow, I can't find anything like that in the general market that's comparable to that. That's really neat and unique sounding. But now everything that's Christian, you're like, oh, okay, so they're and that's sad. It bums me out. But the good news is they are paying their bills. So
there's a win somewhere.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, if you want, so that's the other thing is, if you were doing this in the past, you were doing it because you cared about it, but because like Tonerettes like to talk about how they had to sleep on floors a lot, and I believe them. I think that's a true statement. So if you were doing that, if you were touring the country to share this worldview through hip hop, it was hard life, and now it's so comfortable, so easy. You put your album out, and a month later you get some money, and you make a mortgage payment. So now it's actually attractive. It's like a gold rush, and now it's attracting a bunch of people that don't really care about, I guess, the other side, the listener side of what's going on.
Interesting. And we're in an interesting time right now, so we get to see it play out. Get to see how it plays out over the course of the next 7-8 years.
If we're still alive.
God willing.
Yeah.
Tim, thanks for taking the time, and we appreciate your perspective. Where can people check you out online, if they would like to?
That sounds very creepy.
It's a live webcam of just you.
I hope not. I do the Twitters, and I do the Facebooks. So anywhere on there is good.
What's a handle people can search for?
You can look up Rock Domes, which is ROCDOMZ. It's not spelled right. on all of them. It's the same on all social networks.
Great.
I'm on Google Plus, so.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
We're there. We're there.
Yes. If you have an email address, you're on Google Plus. So
yes.
Check me out on there.
Cool, man. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Always love your perspective and your humor.
Rapzilla.com